The market was loud, dirty, and full of screams. Bright lights hung above cages made of rusted metal. Inside those cages, alien slaves sat with fear in their eyes. Some were young, some old, but all were broken. And in the center cage, she waited chained. Bruised and silent, her skin was pale blue, marked with scars. Her long dark hair was tangled, and her eyes were sharp, but tired. She had no name any more, only a number. 728. No one had called her by her real name in years. Bidders walked past her cage, laughing and shouting prices. Some were tall, insect-like creatures. Others looked like reptiles or robots. They didn't see her as a person, only as an object. She didn't care anymore. She had been sold before, again and again. This time wouldn't be any different. Pain always followed the purchase. Then, the announcer's voice echoed through the market. Lot number 728. Healthy, obedient, and well-trained. Bidding starts now. She closed her eyes, waiting for it to be over. But when she opened them again, something felt strange. A new figure stepped forward, different from the others. It was a human, middle-aged, tall, with a strong build, short graying hair, and calm brown eyes. He wore a dark coat. And he said nothing. The other bidders turned to him with interest and curiosity. A human. One alien hissed, "They don't usually buy slaves." Another laughed, "Maybe he wants her for experiments." Her heart dropped. Experiments were worse than torture. She had seen what happened to those taken by scientists' screams that never ended. The human didn't speak. He simply raised his hand. He gave a price that silenced the room, so high no one dared to match it. He won the bid without a single word. The cage opened with a mechanical hiss. Chains clanked as she was pulled out and pushed toward him. She expected him to grab her roughly, maybe slap her or shout, but he didn't even touch her. He turned and walked away, and she followed, confused, afraid. And still expecting pain, the guards gave him a control device, one button to punish her, one to kill her. He held it for a second, then threw it into a trash bin without a word. What kind of master does that? Inside his ship, he didn't lock her in a cell. He gave her a room small but warm, with a bed and clean clothes. Then he left her alone. No chains, no punishment, no orders. She sat on the floor, staring at the door. It must be a trick. She thought he was playing with her. Humans didn't help slaves, they just broke them. That night, she didn't sleep. She waited for him to come in with knives or ropes, but the door never opened. Only silence. In the morning, he brought food, not in a bowl, but on a plate, real food, warm and fresh. He placed it on a small table and stepped back. "You can eat if you want," he said quietly. Then he left again. She stared at the food for a long time. Her stomach growled, but she still didn't trust it. Poison? Drugs? Why would he feed her unless he wanted something later? But after hours of hunger, she finally gave in. It was real, it was good. And no one hurt her. Later, he sat outside her room, fixing a broken part of the ship. He hummed a quiet tune, not knowing she was watching. He looked normal. Not a monster, not a master, just a man. Still, her heart stayed guarded. She had seen kind faces before, and they had turned cruel in the dark. But this man, this strange human, was already changing something inside her. She didn't know if it was fear, hope, or both. All she knew was this: he bought her. But he hadn't touched her. He fed her, but hadn't forced her. And when she looked into his eyes, she didn't see hunger or anger. She saw something she hadn't seen in years. Pity, or maybe kindness. She whispered to herself, "Why?" But she had no answer. Not yet. Not in the cage, but maybe, just maybe, her cage wasn't locked anymore. She woke to silence. No screams, no electric shocks, no commands. Only the soft hum of the spaceship engines, steady like a heartbeat. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the memory returned, the auction, the human, the food. And the strangest thing of all, he hadn't hurt her. She sat up slowly, still dressed in the clean shirt and pants he gave her. The fabric was soft, and it felt strange on her scarred skin. Freedom wasn't something she understood anymore, so instead of feeling safe, she felt more afraid. Why wasn't he doing anything to her? Why didn't he tie her down like the others did? She stood and walked to the door of her small room. It slid open without any lock. Just opened. She stepped out, heart racing, expecting an alarm. But again, nothing. The hallway was quiet. Silver walls glowing with dim blue lights. She followed the sound of clinking tools until she reached the cargo hold. There he was, the human, sitting on the floor, surrounded by wires, gears, and metal parts. He looked up and gave a small nod. "Morning," he said, like it was just a normal day. No anger, no command in his voice. He just greeted her like she was a person. She didn't respond. She stood frozen, ready to bolt. Her eyes scanned the room. Were there traps, cameras, other slaves? But there were none. Just him and a damaged engine he was trying to fix. He saw her looking. A round end stood up slowly. "Hands open. No tricks," he said softly. "You can walk wherever you like." She didn't believe him. No one meant that, not in her world. "I'm Daniel," he added. "I'm not here to own you," she whispered. Barely loud enough to hear. "Then why buy me?" Daniel didn't answer right away. He looked down, wiping grease off his fingers. "Because I couldn't leave you there," he finally said. It made no sense. Who would pay that much just to not hurt her? No one does that unless they're hiding something worse. He pointed to the metal crate near the wall. "There's food inside," he said, "and water. If you're hungry." She didn't move. Her stomach growled, but she didn't. Trust him, he noticed, and instead of pushing her, he just went back to work. Hour after hour passed. He fixed parts, checked systems, talked to himself. Not once did he look at her the way other buyers used to, and that made her more nervous than anything else, because kindness was always the start of something worse, wasn't it? Later, while sitting alone in the corner, she stared at her hands. They were shaking, not from cold, but from something she hadn't felt in years. Confusion. What was this man doing to her mind? Was he trying to break her without touching her? Or was this real? She spoke again, voice trembling. "If I try to escape, will you punish me?" Daniel looked up, confused. "No," he said. "I told you you're free." Free. The word felt fake, like a cruel joke. Slaves don't get freedom. They get cages, collars, pain. "That's how the universe works. You don't have to stay," he said. "There's an outpost in 3 days. I can drop you there. A choice." She hadn't had a choice since she was 12. Not even in what to eat or when to sleep. Now this human, this stranger, was giving her options. She stared at him, eyes narrowing. "What do you want from me?" He gave her the first honest answer she'd ever heard from a buyer. Nothing. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. Because if it was true, then who was she, without chains? And what would she do if she was really free? She didn't run. She could have. Every door on the ship opened with a soft whoosh, no codes. No locks. He never chained her, never shouted, never even watched her too closely. And that scared her more than any chain ever had, for 3 days. She walked the ship quietly, careful not to touch anything. Not to trust the quiet too much. He had to be waiting for something. No one buys a slave just to be kind. He was always busy, cleaning, checking wires, cooking strange-smelling food. He would greet her if he saw her, then leave her alone again. No orders, no leashes, no punishment. But also no answers, and that was starting to burn inside. Her brain like a virus. Why? Why did he do this? What did he really want? Late one cycle, she stood in the doorway of the control room. He was sitting in the pilot's chair, looking at stars through the window. His face was tired, not dangerous. Just tired, like someone who had seen too much and said too little. She finally spoke, her voice dry like rust. "You paid for me," she said. "A lot." He didn't turn to look at her. "I know," he replied, quiet and calm. She took a step forward, still unsure if it was safe. "So, what do you want?" He finally turned to her then. His eyes weren't sharp or hungry, like other buyers. They were soft, full of something even stranger, regret. "I don't want anything from you," he said. "I just didn't want to leave you there." That made her angry, because it didn't make sense, because it had to be a lie. She stepped closer, voice rising. "No one helps people like me. Not without wanting something. Not without a reason." Daniel stood slowly, not to threaten her but to meet her eyes. "I had a daughter," he said. "She was taken during a raid. Traded off planet." His voice cracked, but he didn't look away. "I never found her," he added, "but I swore if I ever saw someone like her, I wouldn't just walk away." She froze. A daughter. Pain? Was that the reason? Her anger melted into confusion, and confusion hurt more than anger ever did. "What if I ran?" she asked again, quieter this time. He shrugged. "You can," he said, "but I hope you don't." She lowered her eyes. This was worse than chains, because now she didn't want to run, but she also didn't know how to stay the next day. He gave her a task, fixing small wires in the storage bay, not because she had to, but because he believed she could. She stared at the tools for a long time. Then, slowly, she began, and something strange happened as her hands worked, cutting, wiring. Twisting. Her heart felt lighter. She was doing something, not for survival, not to avoid punishment, just doing. He watched from a distance. Didn't correct her, didn't rush her. When she finished, he smiled. "That's better work than I can do," he joked. A smile tried to form on her lips, but stopped halfway. She didn't know if she remembered. How later, he brought her a small screen, an old one filled with pictures. Photos of humans, planets, stars, laughter, food. And one photo in the middle, a young girl with dark eyes and a bright smile. Daniel looked at the image for a long time. "That's her," he whispered. "My daughter, before she was taken." The slave girl looked at the photo. The child looked so alive, and suddenly, her chest ached in a way she couldn't explain. She didn't speak again that day. She simply returned to her room, sat on the bed, and stared at the wall. Not because she was afraid anymore, but because something inside her was breaking and rebuilding at the same time. No chains, no orders, no lies, just a man who had lost something and didn't want to lose anyone else again. She looked down at her scarred hands, and for the first time, she whispered something out loud, just for herself. Maybe he's not like them. Maybe, just maybe, humans could be different too. The ship drifted through space like a ghost, silent, slow, unnoticed, inside. The quiet was no longer cold. It was calm, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel like prey. She was learning how to fix wires, clean panels, boil food. Daniel never told her what to do. He simply offered, showed, and trusted. That alone was more powerful than any command. But something inside her still refused to relax, even as her bruises faded and her stomach stayed full. The pain was deeper. The kind that doesn't bleed but never stops hurting. Daniel noticed. He always noticed. And one day, while they were eating quietly near the control room, he finally asked, "Do you want to talk about what they did to you?" Her hands froze, spoon halfway to her mouth. She stared at the metal bowl like it might vanish. Her voice came out like a whisper dragged through broken glass. "No, Daniel nodded slowly. Okay, he didn't ask again. Not that day. Not the next, but the silence between them began to carry something heavier than fear. It carried truth. She started having the dreams again. The old owner, the whip. The electric collars, the laughing bitters. She would wake up gasping, clawing at the bed. One night, she didn't scream. She walked straight to the engine room, where Daniel was sleeping in a chair. Her legs shook. Her breath was uneven, but she stood there anyway. I remember the first one, she said suddenly. Daniel sat up. The first what? The first time I was sold, she said, voice trembling. I was 13. He didn't interrupt. He didn't move. He just listened. I thought the first buyer would be kind, she continued. He smiled. He said nice things. Her. I stared at the floor. Then he locked me in a box for 2 weeks. No food, just water. Her fists clenched. I begged. I screamed. He said, "Good girls don't scream." Her voice broke. I was always a bad girl after that. Daniel looked like he wanted to cry, but he didn't. Instead, he reached behind him and pulled out a small metal box. He opened it slowly and showed her an old rusted tag. It had a barcode and a serial number. I found this on a mining slave, he said. 10 years ago, he looked at her, eyes gentle. I kept it to remind me why I hate this galaxy. She sat down beside him, not close, but not far either, and for a long time they said nothing. That silence. It wasn't empty this time. It was full of stories, of pain, of quiet understanding. The next day, she did something she hadn't done since she was a child. She laughed. It was small, awkward, and it surprised them both, but Daniel smiled. That sounded nice. Later that week, he gave her something, a small mirror, old and cracked. She stared at her reflection for minutes. Her face was thinner now, her eyes sharper. Her hair no longer tangled. She still looked broken, but not useless, not invisible. She touched her cheek, then whispered, "I'm not her anymore, Daniel." Overheard her and didn't ask questions. He simply nodded. "Good," he said. Because she didn't deserve what happened, but peace never lasts long in space. While checking the nav system, Daniel froze. His voice was tight. "We have a problem." She walked in, heart pounding. "What is it?" He looked at her, then at the screen, a red dot flashing close. "Too close, a bounty ship," he said. "And they're scanning us." She felt the world tilt under her feet. "They found me." Daniel stood and grabbed his jacket. "Get to the lower cargo hold," he said. Calm but fast. She followed without hesitation. This time, not out of fear, but because now she had something to lose. Not freedom, not safety, but the one person who saw the scars beneath her skin and didn't look away. The red light kept blinking, like a heartbeat speeding up before panic hits. Daniel's voice was steady, but she could hear the storm behind it. "It's a bounty ship," he repeated. "Older model, but fast. Probably hired to track you." She froze, not from the cold, but from memory flashes of cages. Electric whips, cold metal floors. "They found me," she whispered. Daniel turned to her. "Not yet, but they will," she said. "They always do." He didn't answer. He moved instead, fast. Fingers flying across the controls, rerouting power, diverting signals. The calm in his face was real, but it was the kind you earn after years of war. "You still have a choice," he said without turning. "There's an escape pod. If they board us, you can use it." She blinked. He was offering her a way out again. Even now, when the danger was real, but she didn't move, didn't run, didn't even look at the escape pod. "Why aren't you leaving?" he asked, finally. Looking up, her voice was quiet, but firm. "Because I'm tired of running." Daniel studied her face for a moment, then nodded once. "Then we do this together." The ship rumbled. Not from weapons, but from a sudden boost of speed. Daniel had turned off the regulators, risking engine burnout. The bounty ship followed, fast and aggressive. Its signal got stronger, closer every second. Inside the cargo hold, she prepared supplies, reinforced panels, checked the emergency suits. Every move was focused, sharp. She wasn't a prisoner now. She was a survivor. Daniel called out, "We're heading into a debris field, hold on." Metal shook, stars blurred past, and broken asteroid pieces slammed against the hull. But Daniel's hands were steady on the controls. He moved like a man who'd been hunted before. The bounty ship stayed close to close, and then it fired. A single bolt hit the rear thruster, shaking the ship violently. She fell, hit the wall, but got back up fast. Status. She shouted, running to the cockpit. "Thrusters damaged. We can't outrun them anymore," Daniel said, teeth gritted. "But I have an idea." He opened a side panel and handed her a worn device, an old transmitter. "We can overload the reactor and dump a false signal, make it look like we exploded." She looked at him, wide-eyed. "That'll work." "It might," he said, "but someone has to stay behind to trigger it manually." Silence, just like the kind that came before pain. Only now, it came before choice. "I'll do it," she said. Without even thinking, Daniel looked stunned. "No, I brought you out of that cage, not letting you go back into one." Her voice was sharp. "You didn't bring me out to keep me helpless." That made him stop, and then he smiled, a proud smile, not because he was in control, but because she had become something more. Together, they rigged the signal burst, timed it perfectly, then ran to the hidden docking pod as the countdown ticked. 5, 4. She glanced back at the ship, her second cage, but the first place she ever felt human. Then the blast, bright and loud. The fake explosion filled the radar. The bounty ship stopped, tricked, confused, then drifted off. Inside the pod, Daniel exhaled. "They bought it," he said. And for the first time in hours, she laughed, a real laugh. Not broken or bitter, just alive, but the ship was gone. Their safe place. Dust in the stars, she turned to Daniel. "So, where now?" He shrugged, looking out the pod window. "Wherever we want." And just like that, the girl who once belonged to the highest bidder was finally free from her past, not because she escaped it, but because she faced it. With someone who refused to leave her behind. The stars looked peaceful, but she had learned long ago they lie. Peace in space was never real, it just hid. The next danger behind the next planet, the next shadow, the next voice. The escape pod floated quietly through dead space. No weapons, no shields, barely any fuel. Just a girl who used to be chained, and a human who refused to chain her. Daniel worked without rest. Tapping the last pieces of metal together, he was trying to fix the pod's old communication panel. If they didn't find help soon, oxygen would run out in 3 days. Maybe less. She watched him, sitting beside a flickering emergency light. Even now tired, bleeding from a cut on his hand, starving, he didn't complain. "You shouldn't have stayed for me," she whispered. Daniel didn't look at her. "I didn't stay for you." He said, "I stayed with you." There was a silence between them again. But this one wasn't heavy. It was honest. Then the radio crackled. A signal, weak but real. Mining outpost. 400 clicks. No weapons, trade welcome. It was their only chance. But as they approached, her eyes narrowed. She recognized the logo flashing on the screen. Her old master's house, one of the largest slave trading networks in this sector. Daniel saw the fear on her face. "What is it?" She hesitated, then spoke. "If they scan me, they'll know who I am," she said. "There's still a bounty on my head, live or dead." Daniel paused, then looked at the controls. "We have no fuel to go elsewhere," he said. "But I'll go alone. I'll bring back help. You stay hidden?" She shook her head. "No. If they catch you, they'll kill you." Slowly, Daniel looked at her seriously. "Then, what do you want to do?" She thought for a moment, then stood, her back straighter than ever before. "We go in together," she said. "They think I'm broken. But they forgot I know their system." The plan was simple, but dangerous. Daniel would pose as a bounty hunter, bringing her in. She would act silent and obedient, just like before. But when they brought her inside for verification, she would overload the ID scanner, while Daniel hacked into their power system and shut the place down for a short escape window. It had to work, because, if it didn't, there would be no second chance. They landed, guards met them tall. Cold-eyed aliens with weapons and slave collars. Daniel forced a rough voice. "Got a prize for you, high bounty girl." "Don't ask how I got her." She lowered her head, pretending to be afraid. Her body remembered the posture to Azili too well. The guards grinned. "Follow us. We'll check her tag and pay you well." Inside the base, everything smelled like oil, blood, and fear. She fought the tremble in her legs. She had lived in these halls once. Now she had to destroy them. They strapped her to the scanner chair. The machine beeped to life. Her heart raced. She looked over at Daniel. He gave the slightest nod, and then bang. The scanner exploded with a spark, shocking the guard. Alarms blared, and lights went red. At the same time, Daniel yanked a hidden wire from the wall. Power systems crashed. Doors unlocked, and panic spread. She broke free of the straps and grabbed the guard's keycard. Together, they ran, dodging confused guards and smoke-filled halls. The facility's defense turrets were down, just like she remembered. They burst through the launch bay and reached the supply ship Daniel had spotted earlier. It was old, but fast, exactly what they needed. As they took off, gunfire echoed behind them. One shot hit Daniel's shoulder. He grunted in pain, but didn't stop flying. She rushed to his side, wrapping cloth around the wound. "You said I had a choice," she whispered. "And I'm choosing you." He looked at her through the pain. "You don't owe me anything." "I know," she said. "That's why it matters." As the mining outpost shrank behind them, she looked at her reflection in the cracked glass window. She wasn't a slave, wasn't a runaway, wasn't a number. She was someone who had fought to be free, and who had paid the price for it with fire, blood, and truth. Because real freedom isn't given, it's earned, and it always costs something. The stars didn't look the same anymore. They weren't just points of light in cold darkness. Now, they looked like open roads. For the first time in her life, she was not being chased. Not by slavers, not by pain, not even by her own fear. She was just flying. Daniel sat beside her in the ship's cockpit. His shoulder wrapped, his face pale, but his hands still steady. He had lost blood during the escape. But when she tried to thank him, he stopped her with a smile. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "I didn't do this to be a hero." She looked at him, then at her own hands. They were no longer shaking. She had stolen a keycard, hacked doors, planned an escape. She had saved herself. Daniel had stood beside her, yes. But he hadn't rescued her. He had believed in her, and that made all the difference after landing on a quiet, unclaimed moon. They repaired the ship together. It took weeks, but each day was peaceful, even joyful. He taught her how to cook real human food. She taught him how to reroute old alien tech. And they talked for hours, not about pain, but about dreams, about names, about the future. One day she asked him, "Why did you really come to that slave auction?" Daniel paused, then said, "Because I was tired of watching the galaxy stay broken." He looked at her, and maybe I was looking for something worth fighting for again. She smiled, real one, bright and alive. I wasn't something. She said, I was someone. He nodded slowly. You still are. Later that night. She stood outside the ship under the stars. She stared at the sky, thinking about all the places they could go. All the people she could help, now that she wasn't afraid. She had chosen her own clothes, made from scratch. No more rags, no more marks of slavery, just soft fabric, stitched with care, and for the first time. She chose her name, not the number, not the code her owners gave her, but a name of her own. She walked into the ship and said, "My name is Kale." Daniel looked up from his tools. "Kale," he repeated. "That's strong." She nodded. "It means second chance." In my mother's language, he smiled. Fitting. Weeks passed. Then months. They traveled quietly through free space, helping others in need. Escaped slaves, broken machines, abandoned colonies. Everywhere they went, Kale was not seen as a victim. She was seen as a fighter, a friend, and sometimes a hero, but some still whispered when they saw them together. An older human man and a once-caged alien girl. Some didn't understand, some never would, but they didn't care. Because what they had wasn't about ownership, it was about trust. One evening, while watching a twin sunrise from a floating observatory, Kale spoke. "You were never my master," she said. Daniel raised a brow. "I should hope not." She smiled gently. "But you were more than that." He turned to her, quiet. "And what does that make me?" he asked, half teasing, half sincere. She looked at him, really looked at him. At the man who gave her space when she needed it, strength when she had none, and belief when she had only doubt. She touched his hand. "A friend," she said. "Maybe. The first real one I ever had." He didn't reply. He didn't need to. Because in the silence, under two rising suns, they both knew this was not a story of rescue. It was a story of rebirth, of freedom, and of the strange, beautiful bond. Between two broken souls who chose each other, she was sold to a man for pain. But instead, he gave her something rare. He gave her the right to become more than a slave, more than a survivor, more than anyone had ever allowed her to be. And Daniel. He became more than a rescuer, more than a father figure, more than a wandering man with regrets. He became a light in someone's darkest chapter, and that was more than enough.